Happy Sunday morning, JWL families. It's Mr. Oliver, reporting to you from my kitchen or dining room. And I just want to go through some information with you because, as you all know by now, the district last Thursday night at a board meeting revealed its plan for reopening school. And I want to go through that in a little more detail because there's a lot in that plan. And without somebody kind of walking you through it, it might be a little confusing. So I'm hoping I can get this video done in about 5 minutes. I'll walk you through the plan so you have some ideas what's going on. And it'll also help inform your decision making, which is something that we're going to be asking you to do this week. And before I do any of that, I'm going to use my screen here, and I want to show you where you can find the plan in its entirety if you want to go look at it. If you go to our website, and of course I just lost the presentation I'm going to need in a minute. If you go to our website, guys, and you'll come in and there's this COVID-19 button on our website as soon as you come in. If you click on that button, right at the top of the page is the MASSENA reopening plan. This plan is a 95-page document that the district has put together to show what we're going to do for reopening of schools. I just wanted to show you exactly where it was, and now bear with me for a second as I get the slides back open that I'm going to go through with you. Because I closed them out when I went to that page. All right, here we go. So, the plan that we created, and before I even start this and go through any of this, I want to let you know that, and this will come up again, the plan that we're creating is certainly not the ideal plan that we wanted to create. If we had our way, we'd have all of our students back in school every day. There's a lot of reasons that that's not possible, and I'll try and explain those to you as we go through here. But what I'm going to tell you is this school year is going to be a very unique school year, as the end of last school year was. And for any of it to be successful, there's going to have to be a strong partnership between the school and our families. You're going to be relying on us to provide an education, and we're going to have to rely on you to help us to do that. So during this presentation, I'm just going to show you what the plan is and tell you how we got here, and I'll tell you where we are by the time we're done. So where we are is for the first part of the summer, starting in early July, and really before July, we were already looking at guidance and thinking about the fall. We've been studying guidance that's coming out from multiple sources, including the New York State Department of Education, Departments of Health. We've looked at NICET stuff, we've looked at SANE stuff, we've looked at CDC stuff. This is just some of the paperwork that I've looked through. To put it in perspective, this pile, it's a big pile, is the material that I've been studying this summer, and all of it's about school reopening, various plans from different agencies. So while I'm certainly no medical expert, I think I've become rather expert on school reopening plans this summer. So we've been studying all that guidance and all that work. And in addition to that, we've been waiting. New York State offered its sort of final guidance on July 13th. So we were waiting the first part of the summer to see that final guidance to make our plan, the plan that I'll be sharing with you today. While we were waiting on that guidance to come in, the district was doing many things as well. We formed a district reopening team, which was formed of principals, directors, union leadership, teachers, aides. We were getting together to talk about the reopening of schools, and this started really in the end of June. In addition to that, there were several subcommittees formed of the reopening team to look at various components of what we knew would be in the plan or what would have to be in the plan. And some of those committees involved teaching and learning committees at grades pre-K to 6 and another one at 7 to 12. I had the honor of chairing the 7 to 12 group. We had a different committee looking at health and safety, another one looking at social and emotional learning, and yet another looking at food service and transportation and athletics and all of those kinds of things. So all of that work was going on. And then on July 13th, we got access to this one. This is the New York State reopening guidance document, which is 145 pages long, which I had the joy of reading multiple times. It's a real scorcher, kept me awake or put me to sleep. But there's a lot in that document. That document talks about everything we have to do in schools, and there's a lot in there to open. The document contains directions on mask wearing and social distancing and health screenings and transportation and all different kinds of options for learning that we needed to consider. It talks about our high need students. It talks about that we're going to have to be flexible because there's a chance we're going to have to move back and forth between multiple different types of learning this year, depending on what the virus does. But what came out clear in the writing of the document is there's definitely an expectation that we're going to do in-person learning in the fall. If you look at anything the governor's talked about up to this point, he talks about infection rates of as high as 9% before you'd go on remote learning. And in St. Lawrence County, we're somewhere below 0.5% right now. The other thing that comes clear in there is that parents are going to have a choice. We're going to put out a model for learning, and I'll explain that. And there's going to be a choice as to whether parents send them to school or not. And whether you decide to send your kids to school or whether you decide the right thing for your kids is to have them home remotely, we're going to give that kid an education. And all of that's going to be reflected in the plan that I'm going to share with you this morning. So the task that the district was given was to create plans based upon the 145-page guidance document. And I'll do a word of caution. This is a topic that we know people are passionate about. People have lots of opinions about school. I mean, after all, I'm a parent too. We're talking about the health and safety of our children, and we're trying to balance the need to get our kids back in school with the need for them to be safe. So we know it raises passion. I want everybody to know that because as I talk about the plan, I want you to know before I do that I get it. Another complicating thing, and I'm not going to be political at all here, but to say that it's become hyper politicized on a national level, which doesn't make our jobs any easier because now you're getting political viewpoints intermingling with medical viewpoints, and it's become a hyper complicated situation. So what we have to do is, as a district, I need you to know that we know there's anxiety out there. We know people feel passionately about that. And we understand that anything we do that isn't kids coming back to school every day is going to have an impact on your family. We know that. I have 2 kids in the district. I'm looking at, thinking about childcare and what are my kids going to do when they're not in school. We know that. And we've considered it as we wrote our plans. But in the end, we still had to write the plans. So now I will be getting into the plan finally, and sorry for several minutes of background, but I just need you to know that before I share with you any of these details. What I'm about to present to you is where we're at in our planning process and what you can expect for the fall. The one last caveat on that is I have to tell you that as I make this video, it's the morning of August 2nd. It's a Sunday. As I sit here right now, I can't tell you whether we're going to be remote or hybrid or what in the fall. That is not going to be a decision that we make in our district. That is going to be a decision that is made for us by the governor or the New York State Department of Education or the New York State Department of Health. We had to write plans that reflected any of the ways that we thought we could possibly open. Ultimately, the decision isn't coming from us. And I think it's important for you guys to know that. It's important to know, too, that this upcoming week, the week of the August 3rd through the 7th or 8th, the governor is going to make an announcement this week. He said it right along. That's going to talk about the fate of schools in the fall and what he intends to do. So if you don't watch his press conferences, this might be one to watch. So keep your eyes open this week. So now getting into the planning, the guidance document from New York State really had 4 options for us to consider. Reopening school normally with no restrictions, reopening school with the implementation of health and safety guidelines. What we're going to talk about is hybrid learning. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, and remote learning. Those were the four options that we were to consider as looking at for reopening schools. Now, immediately, with the state of the virus straight throughout the United States, and even though that we have a low infection rate in St. Lawrence County, we immediately decided that reopening school with no restrictions wasn't possible. And the reason why that is because the health and safety plans in the guidance document mandate emphatically that we have to wear masks and socially distance. So as soon as you add the word socially distance into the plan, number one and number two come off the board for us. The size of our district precludes us from being able to bring all of the kids into the building. There's no way that we could bring in all of the kids and maintain social distancing. We have too many kids. We don't have enough classrooms. We don't have enough teachers. So almost immediately in our planning process, we were left with looking at two options: hybrid learning and remote learning. And that's what I'll spend the bulk of the rest of this time talking about, because those are really the two options on the table for us. So we also know that hybrid and remote learning, whatever we planned, had to be linked so we could flow back and forth between the two. I don't think there's anybody that's going to watch this video that doesn't think there's a strong chance that even if we open the doors to hybrid learning, if the governor says that's what we're going to do this week, that doesn't think we may end up on remote learning as well. If you're watching the news and watching the trend of the virus, it definitely seems to be popping back up. We are in a bubble up here in the North Country, and let's hope that the bubble remains. So in looking at the rest of the plan, just so you have the right words in your head, hybrid learning is really us talking about a combination of in-person and remote learning, or in-person and digital learning. Roughly speaking, the model would be half of our kids are in school on any given day and the other half are at home. Learning on all of those days, except not face-to-face every day. There's some other terms that you should know. It gets kind of messy when you look at digital learning because there's lots of different words that get used, but for the purposes of our plan, online learning talks about anything that's over the internet. Face-to-face learning is what we're used to in school. Digital learning for us is going to be the component of instruction that's facilitated by a teacher, but happens at home. So there's still interaction with the teacher, maybe live interaction we'll talk about, or maybe interaction between them and some content that they've prepared. So that's what digital learning is. And for our plan, remote learning is going to refer to kids that are never coming into school. These are going to be families that, for whatever reason, have decided that that's not the right choice. So remote learning is also part of our plan. So just keep that clear. When I'm talking about digital learning, I'm generally talking about kids that are coming to school, at least sometimes. And when I'm talking about remote learning, I'm talking about kids that are not coming to school at all. We looked at literally dozens of models for hybrid instruction. And the model we settled on for 7th and 8th grade is on the screen in front of you. What it entails, if you're coming to school, is a day in the week on Monday, which is a digital day for everyone. There's no students in the districts on Monday. This is a digital day entirely. All the teachers will be in, and they will be in to work for all of this. But on Monday, there's no students. And then the rest of the week, you could either have a Monday, Wednesday face-to-face with a Wednesday, Friday digital day, or you could have a Tuesday, Thursday face-to-face with a Wednesday, Friday digital day. What you'll also see on here is we are prioritizing right from the start that some of our neediest students, maybe some of our students in certain special education classes or high needs learners, will be prioritized to come into school every day, or meaning all 4 days that we have kids in the building. This model was done because we can only have half of our kids in the school and remain socially distant. And the only way to do that is to make a rotational schedule. The digital Monday, a lot of people have questions about. Without getting too far into the weeds on the educational side of this thing, that digital Monday will be the one day of the week that will probably look a little similar to what we did in the spring, but there'll still be a lot more accountability there, and I'll talk to you about that. The reason why that day is there is to provide time because without getting into it, it takes a lot of time to prep digital content, face to face content, and make all that work. It's also going to take us a lot of time as a district to have all the conversations we need to have about curriculum and instruction and technology and really more than anything else, how to address the holes that were created last spring in the plan that we ran. Now, I'll concede our teachers worked like bananas last spring to make that plan work, that remote learning plan. And there were some things we did really well, but there was definitely ways to improve that. You'll see a lot of that reflected in this plan, but it did leave holes. There's no way that we did as much content last spring as we would normally have done. So it's going to take us a lot of time to figure out how to fill those holes. And that's why the Digital Monday exists. Your kids will still be learning on the Digital Monday, but it'll look maybe more like what you did last spring. Um, Going on in the plan, there's then if you choose the hybrid option for your student, they'll have face-to-face learning 2 days a week. Face-to-face learning is exactly what you think of when you think of school. It's teachers and students in the classroom working on stuff together. The big caveat for face-to-face learning in our plan is it also includes all the mandatory health and safety measures that are put in place to protect staff and students. Those will include mandatory mask wearing, social distancing, hand washing and hand sanitizing, and enhanced cleaning and disinfecting. The district is committed to all four of those things. Students that refuse to wear a mask will not be allowed in school. If by some chance they get to school without a mask, and we'll give them one. Social distancing will be enforced in the hallway, in the classroom, and all the common spaces everywhere in the building. We will have hand sanitizer in all the classrooms. We have hand sanitizing stations that have been installed throughout the building. We're also going to be talking to our students directly about hand washing and frequency with which they should do it. And all of this will be supported by enhanced cleaning and disinfecting by our maintenance staff on a daily basis, both throughout the day and in the night, to make sure the building is clean and safe for everybody. To give you an idea of what you might be looking at, these are just examples of the kinds of things that you'll expect to see around the school. In order to help us with health and safety, we'll have signs about masks and hand washing. And at the junior high, you're going to see one-way traffic in the hallways. One direction of the hallway walks one direction, the other side of the hallway walks the other. Much like you would had seen at grocery stores, there's going to be footmarks on the floor so people have an idea what 6 feet looks like on the floor. We're going to rearrange all of our classrooms to reflect a 6 foot bubble of space around every kid in all the classrooms. Our biggest classes are probably going to have no more than 13 people in them, and probably less than that. So we're going to do everything in our power to teach and to display and to set up the environment in a way where it's easy for kids to remember about their masks and to remember about social distancing. So this is just an example of the kinds of things you'll see around the building. We might not get these exact signs, but it'll be signs similar to these. Uh, so then back into the plan, we've talked about the Digital Monday, we've talked about the face-to-face days. So the other 2 digital days will look a little different than the Digital Monday in the fact that these are going to be sort of directly supporting the face-to-face learning. And there's really going to be a menu of different choices the teachers will be looking at here. The digital days could be doing work based on the material that they had in class. It could be pre-teaching something they're going to do when they're in school. It could be synchronous teaching with a webcam in their classroom. It could be some of our classes the teacher is just going to go live and the kids at home will be watching the same lesson the kids in school are watching, keeping things moving along. We did put some choices in there because different subjects work differently. If you're in a science class, it's hard to do the same thing at home you're probably doing in the class. Whereas if you're in a math class, maybe it'll be easier to just pull up a camera and watch the lesson. So that's what's going to be going on the digital days. All of it being far more robust than what we were able to do on such short notice last spring. In addition to the hybrid, there will also be remote learning for any child that elects or any family that elects to have their kid not go to school. We have a survey out there. We know that a number of our parents are not considering sending their kids back to school at this time, and that's totally okay. That's a choice you get to make as a parent. So for your children, we're going to have a remote learning schedule. So 5 days a week, completely remote. Generally speaking, even in remote learning, we're still going to follow sort of an A-B schedule. So the difference will be is in the hybrid model, there was a face-to-face day where you were meeting with your kids. In the remote model, the students will still be meeting with their teachers, but it will be virtually according to a schedule. So the kids will have to be up, they'll have to be focused, they'll have to check in. We'll be taking attendance, which I'll be talking about a little bit more in a few minutes. But these students in remote learning will have teaching and learning synchronously, is the big digital word, which means a teacher on the computer teaching live students on the other end of the computer on a regular basis. So those are really the two options that parents have to consider. There's a hybrid option and a remote option. As much as we'd love an option where every kid came back to school every day, that one's not on the table for us right now. We can't do that with the social distancing guidelines. So parents have to make a decision between hybrid and remote. Things you should know about these is because when we get to the end here, I'll talk to you about decision making and how that's going to unfold. In the building, universal precautions are mandatory: hand washing, mask wearing, social distancing. Students that cannot follow those expectations will be asked to go on remote learning. We will not, we're not going to get into arguments about masks or social distancing with anybody. These are going to be clearly established expectations, and if for whatever reason the child can't live up to those expectations, then their choice will be remote learning. There is an exception here. Some of our needier special education students who physically can't wear a mask, we're going to make other accommodations for. But 99% of the kids in the district are going to be expected to wear a mask all the time. And those few kids that can't are in usually special programming, and we're going to give our teachers extra PPE to cover them in those rooms. The next thing you should know, the big hole last spring was accountability. We didn't take attendance and we altered our grading process because we were worried about kids' access to the internet and things like that. We're still worried about kids' access to the internet, but the face-to-face days kind of closes that down. If we have a student that we can't come up with an accommodation for reliable high-speed internet at home, we'll prioritize them into school maybe 4 days a week or 3 days a week to make sure they're getting their education. As a result of us being able to close down that problem with not knowing if everybody had internet, our grading practices are going to return to our standard grading practices. Tests and quizzes and grades out of 100, and if students aren't doing their work, it's going to show up in their averages, and no more sort of rubric scores that are a little maybe easier to achieve on. So you should know that grading practice, and this is the same whether you're hybrid or remote, grading practices return to normal. Students will be held accountable for attendance on a daily basis, whether they're remote, digital, or in school. We have to take attendance, and if students are not attending and doing what they need to do, those will be conversations that we'll have with families, and there will be consequences to those if it were to become bad enough. So we expect attendance, and your students are going to be held accountable for attendance. You should know that we're going to cohort our students as much as possible. And all that means is once your kids come to school, the goal of junior high school is going to be very much to have one group of kids in a classroom, and rather than having them move around every period of the day to go to different classes, we're going to do the opposite, which is the kids are going to stay in their classroom and teachers will come to them. We're going to do that as much as possible to keep traffic out of the hallway. We can't do it all the time. Science has to be taught in a science classroom. Music has to be taught in a music classroom. Your kids are still going to have gyms, so they're going to have to go down to the gym. So we're just trying to limit as much movement as possible to limit people coming in contact with each other as much as possible. So that's something that you should know. Our class periods, as a result, will probably be shortened somewhat because with teachers moving around and there's some mandatory cleaning we have to do of the teacher workstations between classes or of the class itself between classes. We need more time between classes to make sure that we can get the cleaning done. I also want to let you know right from the start that our school calendar has been changed. All four of our professional development days for the year are going to hit right away. Right now, as we sit here, I believe our projected start date for the students is September 8th. Once again, that's all subject to change with any announcements out of the governor's office this week. I believe that's my last. Oh, no, one more. So that's just some of the things that I can think about off the top of my head that you should know as you're making a decision. And sort of the next steps for the district, the first half of the summer here was really marked by a district level conversation laying out the big picture plans for everybody. The second part of the summer is now going to be shifting that work to the building levels to figure out how we're going to implement the plan. We've already been thinking about that, but now it's time to get down and put pen to paper and start making decisions and lay out the framework. All the buildings, including the junior high, have leadership teams. Mine has already started to meet to look at this. We're going to have specific procedures and protocols and policies at the building level for how the health and safety guidelines will be put into place, but you can rest assured they will be serious guidelines. We need to write schedules for our students. We need to redevelop the schedule for the day to reflect more time between classes. We need to figure out who the A group is and the B group is. You need to know as a district, we're absolutely committed to making sure that families are in school on the same day. So if you have kids at any level, we're trying to keep them in the A group and the B group together to the best of our ability. So we need to figure those groups out, which in many cases is going to mean going through every kid individually in the district and figuring out which day to put them on. So that's going to take us a little time. We need to clear up the instructional plan and exactly what it is and what it isn't for our staff, which is going to be a huge job. We have to communicate with everybody. We have to tell them what the plan is, what their kids are going to have to do, how to do it. And we plan on doing all of that before the end of the summer. This video will just be the first of many I plan on putting together for our families to communicate with them about what school will be and what you'll need to do to support your students. And honestly, there's probably a bunch of other stuff I haven't even thought about yet that we need to do. So the point of this video was to kind of give you the breakdown on where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. I hope to have cleared up the difference between hybrid and remote learning for you. And the reason why I needed to do that is on Monday, sometime probably Monday morning or early Monday afternoon, we will be sending out what we're calling a commitment survey to all of our parents. That survey is going to be you making a final and binding decision about what you're doing with your kids in the fall. Are you choosing the hybrid option? Are you choosing the remote option? We need to know that information to do a lot of the work that I just talked about. Until I know who's coming to school, I can't establish the A and B group. So we need to have that information as soon as possible. This survey will come out digitally, and we will get as many responses as we can digitally. And as soon as we can, we're going to start calling you guys to make sure that you answer the survey. We are looking for 100% compliance on this survey. We need to know what every kid's doing. So you're going to be asked about all your kids, what options for school you're looking at. We're going to ask you about transportation again. We're going to ask you about your access to the internet again. And we're even going to be asking you about thermometers because part of our plan involves parents being our partners in helping us to make sure kids are screened before they come into school on a daily basis. So all of those things will be in the binding survey. And once that is complete, then we can really get into the planning process. So that survey is coming out on Monday the 3rd, and we're actually hoping to have it concluded by Friday the 8th. It's probably a little bit of a long shot, but that's our goal. So that's sort of where we're at. I suppose the last thing that just occurred to me that I should share with you is that is a binding selection. So if you choose hybrid learning, that's what you're doing. If you choose remote learning, that's also your commitment. But the one caveat to that is if you start the year in hybrid and you decide that that doesn't work for you or it's not working for your kid or you don't feel safe in that model, at any time you could opt out to remote learning. The reverse is not true. If you start in remote, you are going to be in remote until the end of the first quarter. We'll open up windows at the end of every 10 weeks to allow kids back into the building. And the reason why we have to do that is I hope you can imagine that it's not easy to take those students and add them back into the mix. We have to consider schedules and social distancing and where to place kids and all of those kinds of things. So as you think about this, know that if you start hybrid, you can always choose remote. And if you start remote, you can't come back in until after 10 weeks. I think that's enough for one morning. I probably went on longer than I should have, and for that I apologize. But information is key, so I wanted to get some out to you. As always, if you have any questions or concerns, give me an email, give me a phone call. I am in my office every day at this point. I'll be happy to help out and answer any questions that you have. Thank you for giving me some of your time this morning. I hope this helps, as now this week you'll be making decisions about hybrid versus remote learning. And just remember, as always, the JWL staff is here to help you in any way that we can. So thanks. Have a great rest of your Sunday. And if I can do anything to help, please let me know. Bye, guys.